Seryozha Aleshkov, the 6-year-old soldier of Stalingrad. He wore a uniform specially tailored to fit a first grader. His rifle was taller than he was, and when the Soviet army found him wandering through a forest in 1942, crying and alone, they had no idea this orphaned child would become the youngest soldier ever officially documented in World War II. The story of Sergei Seryozha Aleshkov sounds impossible. A fabrication, wartime propaganda, the kind of tale that couldn't possibly be true. But every detail has been verified, documented, and witnessed by dozens of Soviet soldiers who served alongside this extraordinary child. What happened next would challenge everything we think we know about war, childhood, and human resilience. The forest where everything ended. Picture this autumn 1942, somewhere in the Kaluga region west of Moscow. The village of Grin has just been burned to the ground by Nazi forces in retaliation for suspected partisan activity. Among the ashes and bodies, a 6-year-old boy hides in the forest, too terrified to cry out, watching as everything he's ever known turns to smoke. Seryozha Aleshkov had already lost his father 2 years earlier when the war began. Now his mother and older brother lay dead among the ruins. For 4 days he survived alone in those woods, eating berries and drinking from streams, before reconnaissance scouts from the Soviet 142nd Guards Rifle Regiment stumbled upon him. But here's where the story takes its first shocking turn. Instead of sending the traumatized child to an orphanage miles behind the lines, the regiment's commander, Major Mikhail Vorobyov, made an unprecedented decision. He would adopt Seryozha unofficially as the regiment's son of the regiment, a syn polka. This wasn't sentiment. This was survival. The regiment had suffered devastating losses at Stalingrad, and morale was crumbling. Vorobyov understood something profound about human psychology. Sometimes a symbol of innocence, a reason to fight beyond ideology, could be more powerful than 1,000 propaganda posters. The smallest soldier at history's bloodiest battle. Within weeks, Seryozha wasn't just the regiment's mascot. He was a functioning member of the unit. The soldiers fashioned him a miniature uniform complete with boots, belt, and cap, adorned with the Red Star. They gave him duties, delivering messages between officers, helping in the mess tent, maintaining weapons that weighed nearly as much as he did. And then came Stalingrad. The Battle of Stalingrad remains the deadliest single battle in human history. Nearly 2 million casualties over 6 months of urban warfare so brutal that soldiers measured their life expectancy in hours. Into this hell, the 142nd Guards Rifle Regiment deployed in November 1942. With them went Seryozha Aleshkov, age 6. Think about that for a moment. While children in other parts of the world were learning to read, Seryozha was learning to distinguish the sound of incoming artillery from outgoing fire. While others played hide-and-seek, he was navigating through ruined buildings where German snipers waited in every shadow. The average age of survival for a Soviet soldier in Stalingrad was 24 hours. Seryozha would remain there for months. The day a child saved his entire regiment. The most documented and most incredible incident of Seryozha's military service occurred during heavy fighting in Stalingrad, when a German bombardment collapsed the regiment's command bunker. Major Vorobyov and several other officers were trapped beneath timber, concrete, and earth, slowly suffocating. The adult soldiers panicked, overwhelmed by the task of excavating their commanders while under fire. But Seryozha didn't panic. The 6-year-old crawled through a gap too small for grown men, wiggling through the debris like water finding a crack. He located Major Vorobyov, unconscious and barely breathing, and somehow maintained enough composure to crawl back out and guide rescuers to the exact location. It took hours to dig them out, but Vorobyov survived, along with 3 other officers who would have certainly died without the child's intervention. For this action, Seryozha Aleshkov became one of the youngest people ever awarded a military medal when he received the Medal for Battle Merit. The citation, preserved in Soviet military archives, reads with stunning matter-of-factness, "For courage and bravery shown in battle conditions." He was still 6 years old. He couldn't yet write his own name. The psychological puzzle. nobody wants to solve. Modern psychologists examining Seryozha's story confront an uncomfortable question. How did a first grader not only survive but functionally operate in humanity's most destructive conflict? The soldiers reported that Seryozha rarely cried after those first days in the forest. He picked up military procedures with eerie speed. During artillery barrages that sent veteran soldiers into catatonic shock, witnesses described him as simply going quiet and still, waiting for the explosions to stop before resuming whatever task he'd been assigned. Was this resilience or was it dissociation? Was he adapting or was he breaking in ways that simply looked like adaptation? The regiment's medical officer noted in his diary that Seryozha had nightmares, violent, screaming nightmares that woke the entire bunker. But during waking hours, he seemed almost cheerful, particularly when performing his duties or spending time with Vorobyov, whom he'd begun calling Papa Mikhail. We know from modern trauma research that children in extreme circumstances sometimes develop extraordinary coping mechanisms, psychological compartmentalization that allows them to function despite experiencing horrors that would destroy adult minds. Seryozha appears to have embodied this phenomenon completely. When victory arrived, what did it mean for a child soldier? The war ended in May 1945. By then, Seryozha Aleshkov was 9 years old and had spent fully half his life in uniform, 3 years that contained more death and destruction than most people witness in 80 years of peace. True to his word, Major Vorobyov legally adopted Seryozha after the war. But the transition from soldier to child proved almost impossible. Teachers reported that Seryozha couldn't adjust to normal school. He'd been illiterate when the war began and had learned to read and do basic mathematics in military command posts between battles. He was years behind academically, but psychologically decades beyond his classmates. Imagine being 9 years old and having more military medals than homework assignments. Vorobyov eventually enrolled him in military school, the only environment where Seryozha's experiences made sense. He later served in the Soviet peacetime army and worked as a legal aid. According to interviews conducted in the 1990s, he maintained contact with surviving members of the 142nd Guards throughout his life, attending their reunions and remembering comrades lost at Stalingrad. The questions that haunt history. Seryozha Aleshkov's story forces us to confront profound moral questions that have no comfortable answers. Was the Soviet army right to keep him? Should they have sent him to an orphanage, where he'd have been safe but psychologically alone, his trauma unwitnessed and unshared? Was he robbed of his childhood or given a family when he had nothing else? Modern international law, specifically the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, explicitly prohibits military recruitment of anyone under 15. We look back at Seryozha's story with contemporary eyes and see exploitation, see adults who should have protected a child instead of uniforming him. But those who knew him tell a different story. In dozens of interviews conducted with surviving veterans of the 142nd Guards, a consistent theme emerges. Seryozha wasn't used by the regiment. In a profound way, he saved them. He gave them something to protect, something innocent to preserve amid the systematic destruction of innocence. He reminded them what they were fighting for. Major Vorobyov would later say, "We did not take him to war. War brought him to us. We simply chose not to abandon him." The legacy of the youngest soldier, Sergei Aleshkov, lived until 1990, dying at age 54, a full life by any measure, but shorter than it should have been. Those who knew him in his final years reported that he rarely spoke about the war unsolicited, but when he did, his memories were extraordinarily detailed, particularly about the men who'd served with him. What makes his story viral isn't just its extraordinary circumstances, it's what it reveals about human nature at its extremes. It shows us that the categories we use to understand the world, child and soldier, innocent and combatant, victim and survivor, sometimes prove inadequate to capture the full complexity of human experience. The photos of Seryozha in his miniature uniform standing at attention beside soldiers twice or three times his height remain among the most haunting images of World War II. They should be impossible. They should be fiction, but they're not. They're documentary evidence of what war does not just to armies and nations but to individual lives caught in its machinery. They're proof that history's most dramatic stories are often its truest, and that sometimes reality exceeds anything imagination could invent. The 6-year-old boy who fought at Stalingrad survived, but the childhood he should have had never could be recovered. That may be the war's lasting victory, not in the battles it took, but in the innocence it stole and could never return.